Section 4 of Told After Supper. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Told After Supper by Jerome K. Jerome. The Blue Chamber. I rose up and said that I would sleep in the Blue Chamber. Before I tell you my own story, however, the story of what happened in the Blue Chamber, I would wish to preface it with a personal explanation. I feel a good deal of hesitation about telling you this story of my own. You see, it is not a story like the other stories that I have been telling you, or rather that Teddy Biffles, Mr. Coombes, and my uncle have been telling you. It is a true story. It is not a story told by a person sitting round a fire on Christmas Eve, drinking whisky punch. It is a record of events that actually happened. Indeed, it is not a story at all, in the commonly accepted meaning of the word. It is a report. It is, I feel, almost out of place in a book of this kind. It is more suitable to a biography or an English history. There is another thing that makes it difficult for me to tell you this story, and that is that it is all about myself. In telling you this story, I shall have to keep on talking about myself, and talking about ourselves is what we modern-day authors have a strong objection to doing. If we literary men of the new school have one praiseworthy yearning more ever present to our minds than another, it is the yearning never to appear in the slightest degree egotistical. I myself, so I am told, carry this coyness, this shrinking reticence concerning anything connected with my own personality, almost too far. And people grumble at me because of it. People come to me and say, "Well, now, why don't you talk about yourself a bit? That's what we want to read about. Tell us something about yourself." But I have always replied, "No." It is not that I do not think the subject an interesting one. I cannot myself conceive of any topic more likely to prove fascinating to the world as a whole, or at all events to the cultured portion of it. But I will not do it on principle. It is inartistic, and it sets a bad example to the younger men. Other writers, a few of them, do it, I know, but I will not as a rule. Under ordinary circumstances, therefore, I should not tell you this story at all. I should say to myself, "No, it is a good story, it is a moral story, it is a strange, weird, enthralling sort of a story, and the public, I know, would like to hear it, and I should like to tell it to them, but it is all about myself, about what I said, and what I saw, and what I did, and I cannot do it. My retiring, anti-egotistical nature will not permit me to talk in this way about myself. But the circumstances surrounding this story are not ordinary, and there are reasons prompting me, in spite of my modesty, to rather welcome the opportunity of relating it. As I stated at the beginning, there has been unpleasantness in our family over this party of ours, and, as regards myself in particular, and my share in the events I am now about to set forth, gross injustice has been done me. As a means of replacing my character in its proper light, of dispelling the clouds of calumny and misconception with which it has been darkened, I feel that my best course is to give a simple, dignified narration of the plain facts, and allow the unprejudiced to judge for themselves. My chief object, I candidly confess, is to clear myself from unjust aspersion. Spurred by this motive, and I think it is an honourable and a right motive, I find I am enabled to overcome my usual repugnance to talking about myself, and can thus tell my own story. As soon as my uncle had finished his story, I, as I have already told you, rose up and said that I would sleep in the Blue Chamber that very night. "Never!" cried my uncle, springing up. "You shall not put yourself in this deadly peril. Besides, the bed is not made." "Never mind the bed," I replied. "I have lived in furnished apartments for gentlemen, and have been accustomed to sleep on beds that have never been made from one year's end to the other. Do not thwart me in my resolve. I am young, and have had a clear conscience now for over a month. The spirits will not harm me. I may even do them some little good, and induce them to be quiet and go away. Besides, I should like to see the show." Saying which, I sat down again. How Mr. Coombes came to be in my chair, instead of at the other side of the room where he had been all the evening, and why he never offered to apologise when I sat right down on top of him, and why young Biffles should have tried to palm himself off upon me as my Uncle John, and induced me under that erroneous impression to shake him by the hand for nearly 3 minutes, and tell him that I had always regarded him as father, are matters that, to this day, I have never been able to fully understand. They tried to dissuade me from what they termed my foolhardy enterprise, but I remained firm, and claimed my privilege. I was the guest. The guest always sleeps in the haunted chamber on Christmas Eve. It is his perquisite. They said that if I put it on that footing they had, of course, no answer, and they lighted a candle for me and accompanied me upstairs in a body. Whether elevated by the feeling that I was doing a noble action, or animated by a mere general consciousness of rectitude, is not for me to say, but I went upstairs that night with remarkable buoyancy. It was as much as I could do to stop at the landing when I came to it. I felt I wanted to go on up to the roof. But, with the help of the banisters, I restrained my ambition, wished them all good night, and went in and shut the door. Things began to go wrong with me from the very first. The candle tumbled out of the candlestick before my hand was off the lock. It kept on tumbling out of the candlestick, and every time I picked it up and put it in, it tumbled out again. I never saw such a slippery candle. I gave up attempting to use the candlestick at last, and carried the candle about in my hand, and even then it would not keep upright. So I got wild and threw it out of the window, and undressed and went to bed in the dark. I did not go to sleep. I did not feel sleepy at all. I lay on my back, looking up at the ceiling, and thinking of things. I wish I could remember some of the ideas that came to me as I lay there, because they were so amusing. I laughed at them myself till the bed shook. I had been lying like this for half an hour or so, and had forgotten all about the ghost, when, on casually casting my eyes round the room, I noticed for the first time a singularly contented-looking phantom, sitting in the easy-chair by the fire, smoking the ghost of a long clay pipe. I fancied for the moment, as most people would under similar circumstances, that I must be dreaming. I sat up and rubbed my eyes. No, it was a ghost, clear enough. I could see the back of the chair through his body. He looked over towards me, took the shadowy pipe from his lips, and nodded. The most surprising part of the whole thing to me was that I did not feel in the least alarmed. If anything, I was rather pleased to see him. It was company,